My name is Clara Bennett. I am 35, an insurance claims manager, and for most of my adult life, I was the person my family called when something had to be fixed before anyone else noticed it was broken. Thanksgiving dinner, my sister shoved her chair back into my hip hard enough to make my glass tip over. "Move your chair, Beth," I said. She turned around in front of my parents, my mother's boyfriend, 3 cousins, my husband, my 2 tired children, and a man I had spent 8 years trying not to be in the same room with, and slapped me across the face. "You ruin everything," she screamed. My mother did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask Beth why her hand was still raised. She just set down her wine glass, pointed at me with 2 fingers, and said, "Apologize to your sister or leave." My father walked to the front door. He opened it without looking at me. That was when I finally understood that the door had always been open. I had simply been too busy holding up the house to see it. I picked up my purse. My husband gathered the kids. I walked out without saying a word. At 8 the next morning, my mother called screaming because the first envelope had just arrived. If you have ever been the one your family calls difficult because you stopped making their lives easy, stay with me. I am not telling you this because of the slap. The slap was only the sound. The story had been written long before her hand crossed the table. Let me take you back. Every Thanksgiving of my childhood happened at my grandmother's house on Willow Bend Road. It was a long brick ranch with a sunken living room, a basement that smelled like carpet cleaner, and a dining table that had to be extended with 2 folding tables and a card table for the children. My grandmother believed holidays counted only if someone complained about how crowded they were. For years, I loved that house. Then, when I was 27, I stopped being able to enter it. It happened after my cousin's wedding weekend, on the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Everyone was staying at Grandma Ruth's because the hotels were full. I drank too much after the rehearsal dinner. My husband Daniel, who was still my fiancé then, walked me into the guest room, took off my shoes, put a trash can by the bed, and closed the door. Later, my step-uncle Warren opened that door. I am not going to give him more detail than he deserves. I was half-conscious. He touched me. The next morning, he asked whether I remembered, then told me not to make trouble because, in his words, we would both lose more than we wanted to lose. For 4 months, I carried that sentence around like a stone under my tongue. When I finally told my family, my mother cried first. My father went quiet. Beth said maybe I had misunderstood. Grandma Ruth said Warren denied everything and that Thanksgiving was not the time to divide the family. Warren lived in another state. Made everyone act as if distance were the same as justice. They still sent him birthday messages. They still liked his photos. They still called him, a lot to handle, instead of what he was. And every year, Thanksgiving approached, someone explained to me why he might be there and why I should not make everyone uncomfortable. I was the uncomfortable thing. That was the first important lesson. In my family, harm did not become real until it inconvenienced someone they liked better. The second important lesson came slowly. It came through bills, passwords, errands, and emergencies. Beth was 2 years younger than me. She was the pretty one in the way people say, pretty when they really mean forgiven. She could cry at the exact moment my mother began to get angry. She could forget a deadline and somehow make the person who remembered it seem uptight. She could break something and stand beside the pieces looking so wounded by the sound that everyone rushed to comfort her. I was the capable one. That sounds like praise until you hear it often enough. Capable meant I could be interrupted. Capable meant I could be trusted with keys and blamed for locked doors. Capable meant if Beth lost a job, I reviewed her resume. If Dad missed a payment, I called the lender. If Mom's insurance denied a claim, I appealed it before she told anyone at church she was suffering alone. I became an insurance claims manager because I liked a world where a policy either covered something or did not. A signature was valid or it was not. A date was within the filing window or it was late. Nobody in my office could say, "But she is your sister?" and make a deductible disappear. My family found this less charming. They liked my competence the way people like a fire extinguisher, quiet on the wall until panic. The first time my mother asked me to rescue Beth financially, Beth was 24 and had moved into an apartment she could not afford because the windows had good light. The landlord sent a notice after 2 missed rent payments. My mother called me, whispering from the pantry. "She is embarrassed." Mom said, "You know how sensitive she is. She needs a cheaper apartment." Clara, just my name, heavy with disappointment, polished from use. I paid the rally. My mother said, "Temporary is where permanent goes to put on a nice dress." Over the next decade, temporary became a system. I paid Beth's car insurance for 6 months that became 3 years. I covered my father's shop taxes when he forgot quarterly payments. I put my mother's supplemental health premium on autopay because she said paperwork gave her palpitations. I helped Beth's husband Eric with bridge loan for his contracting business because he said one missed payroll would destroy him. I did not think of it as rescuing at first. I thought of it as being family. That is how they get you. They use the warmest word in your language to describe the coldest job in the room. By the fall, everything changed. There were 9 accounts connected to me that should not have been. My parents' utility login, Beth's old credit card, Eric's business loan, my father's payroll portal, my mother's insurance account, the emergency fund I had rebuilt 3 times, the tuition autopay for Beth's son Mason because finally feels stable at that school, a storage unit full of furniture from my grandmother's house, a line of credit my parents had opened with my income listed as backup. I knew it was too much. Knowing is not the same as stopping. The stopping began with a letter from a lender I did not recognize. It came on a Tuesday in September, folded into a white envelope with my full name printed through the little window. I opened it standing by the kitchen sink while my twins argued over cereal behind me. The letter thanked me for my recent application. I had not applied for anything. My hands went cold before the rest of me understood why. Daniel took the letter from me and read it twice. He is a calm man, which is one of the reasons I married him, but his jaw changed. Clara, he said, who has your social security number? I almost said no one. Then I thought every form I had filled out at my mother's dining room table. Every online login I had created while Beth stood behind me holding a baby. Every loan document Eric had said was just a formality. Every time my father said, you know where we keep the folder. I pulled my credit report that night. There are kinds of betrayal that do not raise their voices. They sit in columns. A store account tied to Beth's address. 2 inquiries from lenders Eric had never mentioned. A missed payment on a furniture plan. My name used as household income on my parents' line of credit. Not all of it was illegal. Some of it was simply wrong in ways the law does not always know how to punish. But wrong was enough. I printed everything. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Vivian Cho. She had an office above a title company. The cleanest desk I had ever seen. I apologized before I sat down. This is probably messy, I said. She looked at the folder in my hands. That is why folders exist. For 2 hours, I gave her the history and dates, amounts, and names. She asked questions with no pity in them, which made them easier to answer. Pity would have made me cry. Precision gave me a place to stand. When I finished, she leaned back. You have 2 problems, she said. Financial exposure and family conditioning. I can help with the first. The second will try to drag you back into the first. I wrote that down. Vivian helped me build an exit plan. Remove authorized users, revoke electronic permissions, notify lenders in writing, separate every account where my name had become a hidden support beam, request full documents on anything I had signed, dispute anything I had not. Do not announce this at dinner, she said. I was not planning to? Good. People who benefit from your confusion should not get advance notice of your clarity. I carried that sentence for weeks. Thanksgiving approached the way a storm approaches on a clear morning. That year, Warren was coming back to town. Grandma Ruth called me 7 days before Thanksgiving to give me a heads up, which was her way of asking me to be grateful for pain delivered early. He will only be here a few days, she said. You know how holidays are. I was standing in the hallway outside my office, one hand pressed against the wall. Then we won't come? Clara, don't start. Start. As if I were a match, as if I had not spent years refusing to burn down the room that held him. My mother called that night. She sounded torn, and when my mother sounded torn, it usually meant she wanted credit for pain she was about to pass down. I feel terrible, she said. I want to see you and Daniel and the kids. But Grandma is old. She wants everyone together. Then go to Grandma's. Don't be like that. Like what? Hard. I looked at Daniel across the kitchen. He was helping our daughter Lucy tape a paper turkey to the refrigerator. Our son Ben was under the table pretending to be a dog. My family, the one I had built, was loud and safe and sticky with glue. I'm not coming if Warren is there. Mom sighed. 2 days later, she called with a solution. Thanksgiving would be at her boyfriend Phil's house instead. Immediate family only. No Warren. No Grandma's crowd. She said it like a gift. We moved it for you, she said. The old Clara would have thanked her until the words bruised. The new Clara heard the hook. You don't have to move it for me, I said. We can see you another day. I already told everyone, she said, wounded now. Please don't make this difficult. That was how I ended up baking pies on Thanksgiving morning while my twins fought over socks and Daniel loaded booster seats into the car. I was in charge of dessert because I had always been in charge of whatever nobody else wanted to remember. Apple, pumpkin, chocolate cream for Beth because she said fruit pies tasted like wet bread. We were supposed to be at Phil's at 5. We arrived at 5:30 because children believe shoes are philosophical questions. At first, it was almost nice. Phil's house was not my grandmother's. It was a split level with too much leather furniture and a kitchen island that made my mother look like she was acting in someone else's life. My father stood in the den with a beer he barely drank. Arrived in a red sweater with Eric and Mason. She hugged the twins and avoided my eyes. Mom kissed my cheek and whispered, see? Drama, free? In my mother's language, mate, no one had yet named the drama. The turkey was dry as always. The kids ate rolls and olives. Phil kept refilling wine glasses. After dessert, someone suggested cards. I had a game at home that my mother loved because it made her feel younger than church did. Clara, can you run and grab it? She asked. Daniel looked at me. I should have said no. Instead, I took the keys because the game was 10 minutes away and the night had almost held. When I got home, my phone rang. Daniel, where are you? He asked quietly. In the kitchen. Why? Your mom, your dad, Beth, Eric. Phil left. Left where? There was a pause. Grandma's? The game box sat on the counter in front of me. For a second, I could not feel my hands. Warren is there? I know. They left you with who? Phil's roommate and some woman named Kelsey. They said they'd be right back. Right back became 30 minutes. Then an hour. Then 2. I drove back to Phil's house with the game on the passenger seat and a heat in my chest so old it felt inherited. Daniel was in the living room with our children and 2 strangers, holding politeness together by himself. Lucy was asleep against his leg. Ben was drawing on the back of a paper plate. Pack them up, I said. He did not ask why. That is love, sometimes. Not fixing, not explaining. Just moving when the person you love cannot stand in the room anymore. I texted my mother from the driveway. We're leaving. She replied almost immediately. Letters crooked, words misspelled. Don't you dare. We are almost back. We are going to get wild tonight. My mother had never written a sentence like that in her life. When their car pulled up 10 minutes later, Beth was driving and my mother was laughing too loudly in the passenger seat. Stumbled getting out. My father climbed from the back seat slowly, avoiding my face before I had even spoken. They had been gone longer than they had been with us. I stood on the wet driveway beside our open minivan door. "We're leaving," I said. My mother waved one hand. "Don't be dramatic, we just stopped by. For 2 hours. Your grandmother wanted to see us." Warren was there. Her smile tightened. "You were not there?" That was when something in me cracked cleanly. "Because you moved Thanksgiving, remember, for me." Beth made a sharp sound from near the porch. "Oh my God, Clara. We did move it for you." I turned to her. "No, you moved it because of me. Because my presence made grandma's awkward. Then you left me at your boyfriend's house with strangers so you could still go where I couldn't." My mother said, "Lower your voice." I lowered nothing. "You don't get credit for protecting me when you spent the evening visiting the man I needed protection from." Phil's roommate had appeared in the doorway. Kelsey stood behind him with a wine glass. The children were quiet in the van. Beth looked at the audience and found her favorite version of herself. She turned to Eric and said loudly, "I'm sorry you have to witness my black sheep sister having another episode. There are sentences that open trapdoors under years. Black sheep sister. Another episode." Eric looked uncomfortable, but not enough to help. My mother inhaled the way she did before making herself the victim. "I wanted one drama-free Thanksgiving," she said. I looked at her wine, flushed face, at my father standing by the mailbox, at Beth with her arm tucked through Eric's, at the house where my sleeping children had been left with strangers, while the adults went to drink beside the man they still invited back. "Then you should have stayed for it," I said. Beth stepped toward me so fast her shoulder hit mine. "Don't talk to her like that." Daniel moved, but I lifted one hand. Not because I was calm. Because I was done letting the room say I had made the first move. "Move, Beth." She shoved past me toward the front door, ramming the back of a patio chair into my hip as she went. Water cup from the porch table tipped and spilled over my shoes. "Move your chair," I said, because somehow my brain still reached for the smallest solvable thing. Beth spun around. "You ruin everything." Her hand hit my face before I saw it coming. The sound traveled across the driveway and into the quiet van where my children sat. Lucy began to cry. For one long second, everyone froze. My cheek burned. Rainwater soaked through one sock. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and stopped. My mother recovered first. She always did. "Apologize to your sister," she said, "or leave." I stared at her. She hit me. "You pushed her to it." My father walked to Phil's front door and opened it. He stood beside it, looking not at me, not at Beth, not at my children, but into the warm hallway as if he could hide inside the light. Daniel's hand found mine. I thought of 8 years of being told to let it go, 10 years of bills, every password, every late night payment. Every time my mother said family while handing me a debt, then I thought of Vivian's office, her clean desk, the letters waiting in their envelopes. I did not yell. I did not explain. I did not tell my mother what she had done to me, because some people use your explanations as fabric and sue themselves another costume. I got into the van. Daniel closed the sliding door gently, as if the children were glass. My father still held the front door open. I drove away with my cheek pulsing and my mother's voice already calling my phone. Halfway home, Ben asked from the back seat, "Did we do something bad?" That was the moment I almost turned the van around. Not because I believed we had done something bad. Because my family had trained guilt into me so well that even my child's confusion felt like an assignment. Fix his fear, fix the dinner, fix mom's anger, fix Beth's tears, fix dad's silence. Fix the fact that strangers had watched us leave. Fix the family story before it hardened without you in the room. Daniel reached back and touched Ben's shoe. "No, buddy," he said. "Grown-ups made bad choices. Mom got us out." I kept both hands on the wheel and stared through the windshield until the traffic lights blurred. For years, I had imagined leaving would feel clean. It did not. It felt like carrying a ringing phone inside my ribs. Every mile from Phil's house brought relief and panic in the same breath. I could already hear the version they would tell. Clara stormed out. Clara embarrassed everyone. Clara could not let one holiday be normal. Clara made her mother cry after we moved Thanksgiving for her. By the time we reached home, I had almost convinced myself I should have stayed long enough to explain. That is how deep the hook goes. Even after the slap, even after my father opened the door, some trained part of me still thought a better sentence might save me. If I could explain the 2 hours, the guest room, Warren's name, the stranger's living room, the years of being told I was difficult for remembering, maybe they would finally set down the story they preferred. But explanations had never saved me in that family. They had only given my mother more material. At home, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a frozen washcloth against my face and wrote Vivian one email. "Send them." She replied at 6:42 the next morning. Everything goes out at 7. At 8:03, my mother called screaming. The first envelope had arrived at Phil's house, where she and my father were still sleeping off Thanksgiving. It was addressed to my parents and copied to their lender. Formal notice of withdrawal of supplemental payment support. Dry words, plain words. Words nobody could slap. They meant the automatic transfer I had been making toward their house line of credit would stop in 30 days. They meant the bank would require financial disclosures directly from them. They meant my income could not be listed on any renewal, hardship request, or modification without my notarized consent. My mother did not read it that way. She read it as betrayal because she had mistaken my exhaustion for a contract. Her voicemail arrived in pieces. "What did you do? Your father is shaking. The bank, after everything, call me." I listened once and saved it. Second envelope arrived at Beth's townhouse at 9:15. It revoked her access to the credit card in my name and demanded the return of the physical card. It listed charges from the last 14 months. Groceries, yes. Children's shoes, yes. Also Salon packages, weekend hotel deposits, a $600 birthday backdrop, and 3 charges at a boutique Beth swore she only browsed. She sent a photo of the letter to the family group chat. Is this because I slapped you? You're punishing my kids. I looked at the screen while Daniel made pancakes for the twins. My cheek had faded to a flat red mark. Lucy kept looking at it and then looking away. I typed one sentence. I will always answer a call from the kids. I will not let you spend through them anymore. Then I muted the chat. The third envelope went to Eric's contracting office, which was really a rented desk in a building full of men who called debt leverage. It notified his lender that any restructuring of the business loan I had co-signed required full disclosure to me through counsel. Eric did not call me. He emailed Vivian. Subject unnecessary escalation. That told me enough. The fourth envelope went to my father's shop. It was from me, but Vivian had cleaned the language until it stood straight. Dad, as of December 31st, I will no longer maintain payroll, tax reminders, vendor payments, insurance renewals, or bookkeeping access for Bennett Repair. Enclosed are instructions for each portal and contact information for 3 bookkeepers. Clara. I wanted to write, I love you. Vivian told me not to, because they will answer the love and ignore the deadline. So I left it out. My father called that night. I let it go to voicemail. There was breathing first. Then, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all this. That was all. No apology. No, your sister was wrong. No, I should not have opened the door. Just a man holding instructions he had expected me to become. The fifth envelope was the one that changed the whole shape of the fight. It went to Grandma Ruth. Not because she owed me money, because the storage unit did. When Grandma moved into assisted living, my mother said the family needed a place to put her furniture, just for a month. I signed for the unit because my credit card was handy. A month became 4 years. The unit held old chairs, boxes of dishes, 2 broken lamps. I later discovered 3 plastic bins of papers nobody wanted enough to sort. Vivian had me send notice the unit would be closed in 30 days unless the family transferred it into someone else's name. Grandma called me herself. Her voice sounded smaller than it used to. Your mother says you are throwing away my life. I sat on the edge of my bed. I'm asking someone who wants the unit to pay for it. Your mother said you are angry about Thanksgiving. I am angry about Thanksgiving. I'm also done paying for things nobody else values enough to claim. Grandma was quiet. Then she said, Warren says he always liked you. My stomach turned. There it was. The family trying to make the knife sound like a compliment. Do not say his name to me again, Clara. If you say his name to me again, this is our last call. Silence. For the first time in 8 years, my grandmother chose the silence. It was not enough. By the second week of December, the story my mother told people had become polished. I had caused a scene after she moved Thanksgiving for me. I had refused to appreciate the sacrifice. I had overreacted to my sister's emotional moment. I had weaponized money. I had always liked control. That last part almost made me laugh. If I had liked control, I would have used it years earlier. The relatives came in waves. An aunt texted that holidays were hard for everyone. A cousin said Warren was old and not worth tearing the family apart over. Phil left a voicemail telling me my mother had been beside herself and that no decent daughter would enjoy that. I saved every message. Vivian liked records. I was learning to like them, too. Then Aunt Marcy called. She was my father's sister, the one who lived 2 towns over and had stopped attending Thanksgiving after a fight nobody explained to the children. I had always thought she was cold. Turned out she was simply tired of rooms where warmth meant obedience. Your mother called me, she said. I'm sorry. I'm not. I finally got the updated version of what she thinks happened. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Which version? The one where she moved Thanksgiving for you and you punished her for being generous. I closed my eyes. She left us at Phil's for 2 hours. I know. She went to Grandma's. Duh. I know. Warren was there? Marcy's voice changed. I know that, too. There was something in the way she said it that made me stand still. What do you mean? She exhaled slowly. I mean, your mother told me years ago that Warren scared her once. Before you were born. She laughed it off when she told me, but I never forgot it. The kitchen went very far away. My mother knew, not exactly what he would do to me. Maybe not, but she knew the shape of him. She had felt the shadow of the same door and still told me to stand in the hallway. I gripped the counter. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was a coward, Marcy said. No excuses, no softening. Just the sentence. It stunned me more than denial would have. I am sorry, she said. I should have said it then. I am saying it now because your mother is trying to make you sound unstable, and you are not. That dinner was not for you. It was arranged around you, then blamed on you. I had to sit down. Sometimes validation arrives so late you do not know where to put it. Marcy came over the next day with a folder. Inside were copies of checks from my parents to Beth and Eric, written during the same months my mother had asked me for mortgage help and medical premiums. Your father gave me these by accident, she said. He wanted me to help find shop paperwork. Wrong folder. I read the dates twice. $3,000 to Beth 2 days after Mom asked me to cover the utility arrears. $8,000 to Eric the week before I co-signed his loan. $1,500 for Mason's birthday party while I paid Mason's school deposit because Beth cried about stability. The facts lined up quietly. That was the mercy of paper. It did not need me to feel ready. I sent everything to Vivian. Her reply came back in one line. This changes the conversation. In January, she sent a demand letter. Not angry, not dramatic, just dates, amounts, representations, and the gap between what my family told me and what they did with their own money. She did not call them thieves. She did not have to. My mother called from a blocked number after that. I answered because I was waiting for the pediatrician. Enough, she said one word. Old command, familiar leash. Do not call me from blocked numbers. Then stop forcing me to chase you. Goodbye. Your father may lose the shop. There it was, the old body on the tracks. I did not run. Dade has 3 bookkeeper referrals. He is 69. He has owned a business for 40 years. You know he can't handle these things. Why did you give Eric $8,000 the same week you asked me to co-sign his loan? Silence. Not surprise, not confusion, silence with fingerprints. Who showed you that? She asked. Not what money. Who showed you? I hung up. Final confrontation happened in Vivian's conference room because my mother requested a family meeting and Vivian said, fine. Then we give them a room where the record can hear. My parents arrived first. My mother wore a pale sweater and the wounded expression she saved for hospitals and church basements. My father carried a legal pad. Beth and Eric came in after them. Beth in sunglasses though it was raining. Eric with a leather folder in the calm of a man who had mistaken vocabulary for innocence. They all stopped when they saw Aunt Marcy beside me. My mother recovered first. I didn't know this was a public hearing. Marcy looked at her. That has always been your problem, Pauline. You forget people can hear you. Vivian turned on the recorder. This meeting is voluntary. Everyone signed acknowledgement in the waiting room. Mrs. Bennett, you asked for this meeting. Please state what you want. My mother looked at me instead of Vivian. I want my daughter back. It was a beautiful sentence. It would have ruined me once. Vivian waited. My mother added, less beautifully, and I want her to stop attacking this family. Which attack? Vivian asked. The letters, the bank, the credit card, the shop, the storage unit, all of it. Vivian slid the first document forward. Ms. Bennett is withdrawing voluntary financial support and disputing unauthorized use of her identity. Part, do you claim she is obligated to continue? My mother blinked. Plain language made her look overdressed. Eric stepped in. The issue is not obligation. The issue is destabilization. Clara's actions have consequences for children, elderly relatives, and small businesses. Vivian placed another page on the table. This is the store account opened using Ms. Bennett's information. Delivery address in Beth and Eric's home. Internet protocol data your residence. Balance $4,380. Explain. Beth's face went pale. It was for the kids' room. It was in my name, I said. You always help before. That is not consent. The room went still. Consent is a word that changes temperature depending on who has been avoiding it. My mother's eyes flashed. Do not make this about that. I looked at her then. You made everything about that when you left my children in a stranger's living room so you could go drink at Grandma's with Warren. Her mouth tightened. You were not even there? Because I cannot be there. Because you choose not to be. Aunt Marcy made a sound under her breath. Vivian lifted one hand slightly. Not to silence me. To remind me I did not need to chase every lie, I breathed. Beth took off her sunglasses. We did move Thanksgiving for you. I turned to her. No, you moved it because of me. Then you punish me for noticing the difference. Beth looked away first. My father wrote something on his legal pad. I could see from across the table that it was not words, just a line, drawn over and over until the paper began to tear. Vivian slid the check copies forward. These checks show funds transferred to Beth and Eric during the same period. Mrs. Bennett requested emergency support from us for mortgage arrears, insurance premiums, and business expenses. Mrs. Bennett, did you disclose these transfers? My mother stared at the checks. For once, the performance had no place to stand. Beth had children, she said. There it was. The real ledger. Beth had children. Dad had a shop. Mom had appearances. Eric had opportunities. I had room. I had children too, I said. My mother's eyes flicked up. You had Daniel. And Beth had Eric. That is different. Because you made it different. Her hand closed around the edge of the table. You were always stronger. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was the cleanest confession she had ever made. No, I said. I was trained not to fall where anyone could see. The room went quiet. Beth looked at me for a long moment. Something moved behind her face. I do not know if it was guilt. I do not want to give her too much credit too soon. But it was the first time she seemed to see me as a person instead of a locked cabinet she could not open. I shouldn't have slapped you, she said. My mother snapped. Beth. Just her name, but it carried a whole childhood. Do not break the story. Do not make me choose a new villain. Beth flinched. I saw it then. The golden child had a collar too. It was prettier than mine and people complimented it, but it still tightened when she moved wrong. I shouldn't have. Beth repeated, quieter. It did not fix anything. It mattered anyway. This is emotional blackmail? Vivian looked up at him. No, Mr. Hayes. This is a creditor dispute, a co-signer dispute, and potentially an identity misuse dispute. The emotional portion appears to be what your family used before Ms. Bennett retained counsel. Aunt Marcy coughed once into her hand. My father stopped drawing lines. My mother looked at me across the table. Was it worth it? She asked. All this over one bad Thanksgiving. One bad Thanksgiving. The phrase sat there, trying to fold 8 years into one plate. I thought of the guest room door. My grandmother's house. The 2 hours at Phil's while my children sat with strangers. Beth's hand. My father's door. The first envelope. The checks. The way my mother had known enough about Warren to know better and still chose convenience. I said, not over one Thanksgiving. Because of all the years you asked me to make every Thanksgiving possible, nobody signed anything that day. That is not how real endings work. But after that meeting, the paper kept moving. The unauthorized store account was closed and investigated. Beth and Eric took responsibility for part of the balance because Vivian made the alternative very clear. My parents' lender removed my income from review documents. The bank did not foreclose, but the house line had to be restructured without me, which meant my mother had to cancel a kitchen renovation she had been calling necessary. My father hired one of the bookkeepers and discovered he had not been helpless, just unpracticed. The storage unit was transferred to Grandma Ruth's name after she realized I was not bluffing. She called once to tell me Warren would not be at Easter. That is not a gift to me, I said. That should have been the minimum. She did not argue. That was new. Beth's marriage cracked in spring. Not because of me, no matter what my mother told people. It cracked because Eric had opened 2 more accounts. Beth's name and one using his brother's address. Consequences, once introduced, tend to recognize each other across a room. Beth called me from her car in April. "Did you know?" she asked. "Mom says I should wait until I'm less emotional. Mom says that when your emotions are inconvenient." There was a long silence. "I am sorry," Beth said, "for hitting you. And for calling you that, black sheep sister." The words still had teeth. "Thank you for saying it. Do you forgive me?" I looked across my office at a stack of claims waiting for review. Dates, codes, evidence, decisions. "Not yet," she cried then, not loudly, not for effect or not only for effect. I could hear her trying to swallow it. "Okay," she said. That was the first time my sister let my no stay a no. We began again around the children because children should not have to carry adult wreckage if the adults can put it down somewhere else. Mason and my twins met at a park in June. Beth asked before hugging me. I said no the first time. She nodded. The second time, in August, I said yes. My father came to my house in October with a small envelope. I almost did not open the door. Daniel stood behind me, not close enough to pressure, close enough to remind me I was not alone. Dad looked older through the glass. He held the envelope with both hands. "I wrote something," he said. "Marcy said if I tried to wing it, I would hide." I opened the door but left the storm door closed. He read through the screen. He said he was sorry he opened the door. He said he should have taken my children home the moment Warren's name entered the holiday. He said he had let my mother make hard things into my job because I was good at jobs and he was good at disappearing. He said Beth should have been asked to leave that night, not me. He did not ask me to make him feel better. That was how I knew Marcy had helped. When he finished, I said, "Thank you." He nodded. "I don't expect anything." "Good," I said. He almost smiled. It was not fixed. It was honest enough for the porch. The next Thanksgiving, we did not go to Grandma Ruth's. We did not go to my mother's. We went to Aunt Marcy's, where dinner started late because her oven ran cold and nobody blamed me for it. Came with Mason and without Eric. My father brought mashed potatoes from a deli and admitted it before anyone asked. Daniel carved the turkey. The twins played cards under the table. At one point, Beth reached for her chair and paused. "Am I crowding you?" she asked. Such a small question. It nearly undid me. "No," I said. "You're fine." My mother did not come. She sent a card in a cream envelope. "Clara, I hope someday you understand what you did to this family." "Mom, I read it once and put in the folder. Not the exit folder. A new one. The label said proof. Not proof for court. Not anymore. Proof for me? For the days when guilt tried to rewrite the record in my mother's handwriting." After dinner, Aunt Marcy raised her glass. "To people who stay where they are safe," she said. My father looked at me when he lifted his. Beth did too. I thought of Phil's driveway, the slap, the door, the first envelope landing in my mother's hands like a language she could not charm. I thought of the Reddit posts I had read late at night after the first letters went out, strangers telling other strangers that guilt did not always mean wrongdoing. Sometimes guilt meant you had stopped performing the role that kept everyone else comfortable. For years, my family called me the black sheep because it was easier than admitting I was the one who kept seeing the wolf. They called me dramatic because I remembered what they wanted to make forgettable. They called me controlling because I finally controlled what had my name on it. They called me cruel because I stopped making cruelty convenient. I want to leave you with this because I know some of you have been handed the same job in different houses. You are not the family emergency fund. You are not the designated driver for people who keep choosing the same wreck. You are not required to sit at a table where the person who hurt you gets a plate and you get a lecture about peace. And if they move the whole holiday, for you, then abandon you in the middle of it. Blame you for leaving. Listen carefully. They did not move it for you. They moved the discomfort onto you. My sister slapped me at Thanksgiving. My mother told me to apologize. My father opened the door. So I walked through it. The next morning, the first envelope arrived. They thought I had started a war. I had only stopped funding the surrender.